Hi, Steve Summers and Robby Boydstun for educ.com. Robby, it's Sunday and a very rainy Sunday.
Beautiful day in Oregon.
It is a beautiful day in Oregon. Well, let's talk about Oregon recruiting.
Let's do it. Let's see. This week, Oregon, despite it being dead period, pretty busy week. They picked up 2 new recruits. One kind of a shocker to everybody. Jake Pisarcik, kind of an unknown. Turns out he switched positions from a tight end to more of an offensive line blocking position, and it turned out to do very well for him. Unfortunately, it didn't get him a lot of notice since not a lot of people knew about him. Anyway, they sent a tape over to Oregon. Oregon liked him. Coach Steve Greatwood went out there, talked to him, and offered, and pretty much right on the spot, sounds like Pisarcik said, I want to play for Oregon, called it his dream school in an article posted on our site. And it's a pretty big get. If you watch the kid's tape, he's just, big power blocker. When he hits the line, he's the one driving the players back, and he's opening up the big holes and driving people to the ground. Just a monster, 6'3", 278. Think he's going to be a good get for Oregon. Also, late last night, Oregon picked up another prospect in Danny Mattingly out of Spokane, Washington. Another great pickup, a kind of a two-way guy, can play linebacker or tight end. Also able as a tight end to make some good running lanes. A good blocker. Seeing his game film he was a very impressive player. He has a motor, just nonstop, always goes. And he had been committed to Notre Dame, had a few offers from Alabama, Oklahoma. So he was a kid that really he was wanted across the country. People recognized his talent, and Oregon was lucky enough to come in after Notre Dame was out of the picture and pick him up.
Well, that was a big get for Oregon. It seemed like that recruiting had been sort of still for a while, and then all of a sudden the recruits start picking up.
And that's what I found interesting. For about 10, 11 weeks there during the regular season, especially towards the end, there was no activity. You would hear a lot about coaches were talking, but nothing was coming out. Players weren't committing. You start thinking maybe there's rumors going around, coaching. All this stuff comes into play, and now all of a sudden they hit dead period, and they've gotten 3 commits in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and all of a sudden it's looking like they're going to be starting to hit. For a while it looked like lower numbers for Oregon. Fans were kind of preparing for the worst. All right, we'll take a low class. Now it's looking like they're back on track to get somewhere around that 18, 19 range. And I think as it goes along and as January becomes more of an aggressive month, like we talked about last week, and if Oregon's doing this right now with dead period, there's what's to say they can't do something more, especially when they get more contact with these players.
Well, of course, Oregon has been preparing for football games, and next it is on January 3rd. Today is the 23rd, so we're right before Christmas. On the January 3rd will be the Fiesta Bowl, which Oregon plays Kansas State. So during that time also, though, there's going to be some high school all-star games, which some Oregon players are going to be involved, or some Oregon recruits are going to be involved in.
That's right. Actually, if you kind of watch across the board, there's the U.S. Army All-American game, the Semper Fi game, the Under Armour game. Yes, thank you. All these games are going to feature Oregon talent or players that could become Oregon talent, players that Oregon has their eye on. Leon McQuay, for example, a safety out of Florida. We've talked about him last week. He's going to be at the Under Armour game. Said he might announce there whether or not he will be attending Oregon or another school. I talked to John Munt earlier this week. He's an Oregon commit. He got an offer, so he'll be playing in the Semper Fi game. So been a heck of a week for him. He also picked up a championship last week. Austin Hooper will be playing in a game. Thomas Tyner will be at the U.S. Army All-American game. There's just all across the board, you're going to see players either committed to Oregon or players that could be committed to Oregon in the near future. So I think for Oregon fans, if you want to kind of get a glimpse into the future, that's where you're going to find it.
Well, that's some exciting news for the Oregon recruits that are going to be playing in those all-star games. And for Duck fans, it's, again, as we talked about, this is probably not going to be a class that has 25 players in it. However, it's going to be a class that is, because of that cycle, if we go back 5 years ago, the Ducks signed a 20-player class, and so this is sort of in that cycle where there's not going to be as many potential student athletes that they're going to sign for this upcoming year.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that, like I said before, it it was kind of panic mode a little bit because there was a low amount of players. But then again, you get 3 in a couple weeks, and talking to a few players this week, Oregon offered a defensive lineman out of Wisconsin who was still committed to Wisconsin verbally, but with the coaching change up there, he's kind of reopened his options, taken another look at it. His name's Alec James. That'd be a good pickup for Oregon. He had a productive meeting with Coach Azzanaro here a couple weeks ago. Talked to J.D. Hinnant, who, if you remember, very strong prospect, got into a serious car wreck towards the end of his season, so he's been healing up, recuperating, just got out of a wheelchair. Now he's on crutches. He's able to fly and take visits. He says he's trying to get to Oregon about the 2nd or 3rd week of January, and that he received a visit from Coach Greatwood, and he told him that they're going to recruit him as hard as they did before the accident. They think he can get back to the shape he was in prior to that. And so him narrowing his choices down between Cal, Duke, and Oregon, that plays very well for Oregon, considering he eliminated previous strong contenders in Nebraska and Oregon State. So I think Oregon's picking up more and more interest. And I think, again, it might not be the biggest class, but it's going to be a strong class. I think the players that are committed that I've talked to say that they're already in contact with each other. They talk regularly. They're building that chemistry. And I think that's what you want to focus on as a fan is that it might not be big, but they've got the chemistry, and that'll bode well heading into the year. They'll pick things up quicker. It'll look a lot smoother heading into fall camp.
Well, that's great news for the individual in J.D. Hinnant's case. Really good news that he's healing up, recovering from, as you say, a very serious auto accident. So good news for him. And so here we are, a couple of days off Christmas. Robby, wish you a very happy holidays.
You too, Steve, and everyone out there as well.
And so for Robby Boydstun, this is Steve Summers for educ.com.